It's about the view. It's become like a medical hospital that displays human misfailure. Like, it's like here, let's look at this political oddity. You know, it's like, it really is like the left-wing equivalent of a carnival sideshow, except instead of bearded ladies and fat clowns and two-headed cows. Well, let me rephrase that.
But Greg, Gutfeld, and Tyrus didn't just roast Sunny Hostin, they straight up turned her into an appetizer at a savage media cookout. 1 minute she's on her usual soapbox, the next she's verbally shredded into bite-sized pieces served with a side of sarcasm. This wasn't a debate on Gutfeld, it was a comedic ambush. Hostin, a mainstay on The View, walked into the segment expecting to deliver her signature moral lectures, only to find herself in the crosshairs of two of the sharpest tongues on TV. The studio lights dimmed metaphorically as Greg and Tyrus prepped the grill, ready to turn her sanctimonious style into a laugh riot. The stage was set for a clash that wasn't just personal, it was a takedown of the entire polished pundit playbook. What started as a standard primetime panel morphed into a verbal cage match that left the audience gasping. Greg and Tyrus didn't just spar with Hostin, they turned the segment into a roast battle that felt like a pay-per-view event. Hostin came armed with her usual arsenal, facts, indignation, and a courtroom glare. But Greg and Tyrus, they brought comedy napalm. Their jabs were relentless, landing with the precision of a sniper and the brutality of a stand-up comic heckling a heckler. Hostin's attempts to steer the conversation into serious territory were derailed by punchlines so sharp they could have cut through her blazer. The studio became a coliseum, and Hostin was the gladiator who didn't realize she'd brought a script to a sword fight. Sunny Hostin struts into debates like she's Judge Judy reincarnated, ready to prosecute the panel with a law degree and a side of moral superiority. Her vibe screams, "I've done my research and you're already wrong." She's the type to fact-check you mid-sentence while delivering a side-eye so lethal it could double as a construction tool. On The View, she's known for her no-nonsense, all-business approach, zero giggles, maximum gravitas. Her arguments are layered with stats and righteous indignation, designed to make you feel like you're failing a civics test. But this time, her polished armor was no match for the comedic chaos Greg and Tyrus unleashed, turning her courtroom swagger into a setup for their punchlines. Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus are a predator duo, a lion and a crocodile teaming up to take down their prey. They didn't fight each other, they locked onto Hostin like a comedy SWAT team. Greg's the spark, igniting the stage with rapid-fire sarcasm that leaves no talking point unmocked. Tyrus is the closer, delivering slow, deliberate lines that hit like a wrecking ball. Together, they turned Hostin's debate into a demolition derby. She thought she was in a policy discussion, but they flipped the script into a roast, tag-teaming her with a rhythm so tight it felt choreographed. Hostin was a deer in headlights, stuck in a verbal beatdown she didn't see coming. Greg Gutfeld treats every news segment like it's open mic night at a comedy club. Headlines are just setups for his killer punchlines, delivered with a smirk that says, "I know I'm right." His wit is a high-octane mix of pop culture references, internet deep-cut receipts, and intellectual shade. Against Hostin, he was in his element, turning her earnest lectures into comedic fodder. "Scum, but at least you're honest, scum," he quipped, framing her as the poster child for legacy media's performative outrage. Greg doesn't just mock, he dissects, peeling back Hostin's polished veneer to reveal the recycled talking points underneath. It's stand-up with a PhD in sarcasm. The PBS Finding Your Roots bombshell was Greg's golden ticket. Hostin, a vocal advocate for reparations and a critic of white privilege, learned she's descended from European slave owners. Greg pounced, wielding this like a comedic harpoon. "Not as oppressed as you claim, huh?" he jabbed, turning her identity-driven narrative into a punchline. The hypocrisy angle was too rich to ignore. Hostin's fortune built on racial justice rhetoric got flipped into a savage roast about her lineage. It wasn't just a personal dig, it was a takedown of her entire platform, exposing the cracks in her moral high ground with surgical precision. Tyrus doesn't need to raise his voice to dominate, he's a calm storm, watching Hostin's arguments pile up like a house of cards before knocking them down with one devastating line. When she leaned into her moral lecture mode, Tyrus just raised an eyebrow and delivered a quip like, "You're not fooling anyone." His deadpan delivery is a masterclass in restraint, letting the silence stretch just long enough for her words to sound absurd. His honest scum line, calling out media lies, wasn't just a jab, it was a mic drop that left Hostin's sanctimonious tone echoing in an empty studio. Greg and Tyrus handed Hostin the game ball for her role in pushing divisive narratives that backfired spectacularly. They argued her rhetoric, labeling opponents Hitler and doubling down on outrage, alienated viewers, paving the way for conservative wins in the Senate and beyond. "Keep doing what you're doing," Tyrus smirked, suggesting her lies fueled a voter revolt. It's a brutal critique. Hostin's insistence on moral superiority didn't just lose the argument, it handed political victories to her opponents. The game ball was less an award and more a sarcastic nod to her self-own. This wasn't just a debate, it was a comedic assassination. Greg and Tyrus used humor like a scalpel, slicing through Hostin's polished punditry to expose its absurdity. Their jokes didn't just entertain, they dismantled the facade of serious news. Hostin's lectures, meant to sound profound, became laughable when Greg reframed them as daytime drama scripts and Tyrus boiled them down to basic contradictions. The audience saw through the moralizing haze, laughing not just at Hostin but at the entire legacy media machine she represents. Greg Gutfeld's style is a verbal fireworks show, fast, flashy, and dangerously clever. He blends sarcasm, cultural digs, and media critique into punchlines that hit like a conspiracy theory at a family reunion. Against Hostin, he was relentless, calling her out as the high priestess of performative outrage. "Your race obsession showing," he quipped, turning her Finding Your Roots reveal into a Broadway-level roast. His jokes are layered, pulling from X posts, news clips, and internet memes, delivered with a smirk that says, "I'm smarter than your script." Tyrus is the quiet giant of comedy, wielding silence like a weapon. While Greg dazzles with verbal acrobatics, Tyrus waits, letting Hostin's overcomplicated arguments collapse under their own weight. His one-liners like "sounds like she's got a software update overdue" are delivered with such calm precision they feel like a finishing move in slow motion. He doesn't need to shout, his tone says, "You just exposed yourself and I didn't even try." Tyrus turns Hostin's polished rants into background noise with a single devastating quip. Greg and Tyrus are a comedy tag team built for chaos. Greg storms in like a stand-up headliner, stirring the pot with razor-sharp sarcasm that gets the crowd buzzing. Tyrus glides in like a hitman, cool and collected, landing the finisher with one line that flips the room. Together, they didn't just clash with Hostin, they dismantled her. Greg sets the stage by mocking her dramatic overreach. Tyrus seals it with a quip so brutal the studio goes silent. It's a perfectly timed demolition, leaving Hostin's serious vibe in ruins. Hostin's power panel persona, confident, fact-heavy, morally superior, crumbled under the comedic onslaught. Her go-to move, the emotionally charged rebuttal, was no match for Greg's sarcasm and Tyrus's deadpan. Greg made her lectures sound like a glitching TED Talk. Tyrus reduced them to a soap opera script gone wrong. Her attempts to stay composed looked desperate, like a politician caught in a scandal clinging to talking points. By the end, her dignified armor was shattered, replaced by the awkward silence of a defeated pundit. This roast wasn't just about Hostin, it was a middle finger to the old guard news model. Stoic anchors, scripted monologues, and moral lectures are fading fast. Greg and Tyrus represent a new wave, raw, unfiltered, and brutally funny. Audiences are done with being talked down to. They want commentary that feels human, chaotic, and real. By turning Hostin's seriousness into a punchline, they expose the cracks in a media system that thrives on pretense, signaling a shift toward humor-driven truth. Greg and Tyrus don't just crack jokes, they wield humor like a weapon. Their sarcasm and one-liners cut through Hostin's sanctimonious tone, exposing the absurdity of her recycled talking points. "She's shaming descendants while being one," Greg quipped about her ancestry, turning her moral high ground into quicksand. Tyrus's deadpan, honest scum line called out media hypocrisy with brutal simplicity. This isn't just comedy, it's resistance, dismantling the polished facade of TV punditry with laughs that hit harder than any lecture. One moment sums it up. Greg clowns Hostin's outrage as virtue-signaling robot mode, landing a jab that has the audience chuckling. Before they can catch their breath, Tyrus slides in with, "Sounds like she's got a software update overdue." The studio freezes, then erupts. That 1-2 punch was precision-guided comedy, obliterating Hostin's carefully curated seriousness. It wasn't just a joke, it was a masterclass in timing, exposing her as a walking caricature of media sanctimony in real time. Their rhythm is lethal. Greg's rapid-fire quips strip away Hostin's confidence like a fast-forwarded documentary nobody asked for. He calls her climate change eclipse theory the dumbest take of all, landing laughs with intellectual flair. Then, silence. Tyrus takes the mic, pauses just long enough to let the tension build, and drops a line so brutal it feels like the room stops. "She's stuck in a soap opera rerun," he says, and the crowd loses it. Their timing isn't just comedy, it's a knockout dance. The View became a symbol of everything Greg and Tyrus despise: dated, sanctimonious punditry. Greg called out its race-baiting hosts, urging them to fire the likes of Hostin and Whoopi for alienating viewers. Tyrus nailed it with the sunk cost fallacy: they're carrying a bag of lies too heavy to drop. The show's stuck in a loop, pushing divisive rhetoric while losing daytime viewers. Greg and Tyrus didn't just roast Hostin, they exposed The View as a glitching rerun, out of touch and out of time. The audience wasn't just laughing, they were witnessing the collapse of the traditional TV pundit formula. Hostin's solemn tone, meant to command respect, turned into a punchline before she could finish her sentence. Greg's sarcasm made her sound like a broken record of outrage. Tyrus's one-liners sealed her fate. The crowd's roars weren't just for the jokes, they were cheering the unraveling of a media model that's all talk, no substance. Every chuckle was a vote for raw, unfiltered commentary over scripted moralizing. Greg and Tyrus didn't just humiliate Hostin, they rewrote the rules of political commentary. Sarcasm trumps sanctimony, humor hits harder than headlines. They're not just commentators, they're cultural disruptors, armed with punchlines that cut deeper than any think piece. In a world tired of stiff anchors and recycled lectures, they deliver truth with chaos and edge. The mic belongs to the sharpest voices, not the loudest ones, and Greg and Tyrus are locked and loaded, leading a shift where laughter is the ultimate mic drop.